The resurrection of Jesus Christ is the central event of the Christian faith. For Christians, the resurrection is not merely a symbolic or spiritual reality, but a historical fact that affirms Jesus' divinity and the truth of his teachings. The resurrection is the cornerstone of Christian theology, as it validates Jesus' claims about himself and provides the basis for the forgiveness of sins and the promise of eternal life. As with many key events in ancient history, the resurrection of Jesus is not directly verifiable through modern historical methods. We have no archaeological artifacts or contemporary eyewitness accounts that can conclusively prove the resurrection occurred exactly as described in the Bible. However, the biblical accounts, along with other historical evidence, provide a compelling case for the reality of the resurrection. The primary sources for the resurrection narrative are the four Gospels of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These accounts were written by the disciples of Jesus or their close associates in the decades immediately following his crucifixion. While the Gospel writers had theological motivations in recounting the resurrection, their accounts contain details and perspectives that indicate they were based on eyewitness testimony. One of the most significant pieces of evidence for the resurrection is the radical transformation of the disciples themselves. Prior to the crucifixion, the followers of Jesus were a small, discouraged, and often fearful group. They had pinned their hopes on Jesus as the long-awaited Messiah, but his brutal execution on a Roman cross shattered their dreams and left them in despair. However, in the weeks and months following the crucifixion, these same disciples underwent a remarkable change. They boldly proclaimed that Jesus had risen from the dead and that they had seen him alive. They were willing to suffer persecution, imprisonment, and even martyrdom for their faith in the resurrected Christ. What could have caused such a dramatic reversal in their outlook and behavior? The most plausible explanation is that the disciples truly encountered the risen Jesus. Multiple gospel accounts describe various post-resurrection appearances of Jesus to his followers, including individual disciples as well as larger groups. These appearances not only restored the disciples' faith but also commissioned them to go out and spread the good news of Jesus' resurrection. In addition to the testimony of the disciples, the Apostle Paul provides important historical evidence for the resurrection. Paul was a zealous persecutor of the early Christian movement until his dramatic conversion on the road to Damascus. In his letters, Paul recounts that the resurrected Jesus appeared to him as well, and this encounter transformed him into one of the most influential leaders of the nascent Christian church. Paul's writings also contain what scholars believe to be an early Christian creed, which lists the various people to whom the resurrected Jesus appeared. This creed, which likely predates the Gospels, indicates that the belief in the resurrection was firmly established within the first few years of the Christian movement. Furthermore, the rapid growth and spread of Christianity in its earliest days lends credibility to the resurrection accounts. Despite facing intense persecution from both Jewish and Roman authorities, the Christian faith spread quickly throughout the Roman Empire. This suggests that the disciples' bold proclamation of the risen Christ resonated with people in a powerful way, leading many to put their faith in him. Of course, skeptics have proposed alternative explanations for the origins of Christianity, such as the disciples having hallucinations or the body of Jesus being stolen. However, these theories fail to adequately account for the totality of the historical evidence and the transformation of the disciples. Ultimately, while we cannot conclusively prove the resurrection through modern historical methods, the biblical accounts, the transformation of the disciples, the testimony of Paul, and the rapid growth of early Christianity all point to the resurrection as the most plausible explanation for the origins of the Christian faith. The resurrection of Jesus is not merely a matter of religious belief but a historical event that has profoundly shaped the course of human history. The Gospel accounts of the resurrection begin with the women who went to Jesus' tomb on the third day after his crucifixion. In the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the women, including Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Joanna, and others, find the tomb empty and encounter angels or the risen Jesus himself. These women then report what they have seen to the male disciples, who initially doubt their testimony but later have their own encounters with the risen Christ. The different Gospel writers provide somewhat varying details about the resurrection appearances, but they all agree on the core narrative: Jesus, who was crucified and buried, is no longer in the tomb, and his followers encounter him alive again. This consistent testimony from multiple independent sources lends credibility to the resurrection accounts. One of the most compelling aspects of the resurrection narratives is the prominence of women as the first witnesses. In the patriarchal culture of ancient Judea, the testimony of women was generally not considered reliable or admissible in legal proceedings. Yet the Gospels place women at the center of the resurrection story, suggesting that the writers were committed to accurately recording the historical events as they occurred, even if it meant highlighting the witness of those whose testimony would have been viewed as suspect. Furthermore, the fact that the disciples initially disbelieved the women's reports of the empty tomb and the risen Jesus points to the honesty and authenticity of the accounts. If the writers were simply fabricating a story, they likely would have portrayed the male disciples as immediately accepting the women's testimony. Instead, the Gospels depict the disciples as skeptical and requiring their own encounters with the risen Christ before fully believing. The Gospel writers also include details that would have been difficult to include in a fictional account. For example, the specific references to the names and roles of the women who went to the tomb, as well as the report that the stone had been rolled away, suggest that the writers had access to eyewitness accounts and were not simply constructing a theological narrative. If the resurrection did not occur, it is difficult to imagine what could have motivated the disciples to so radically alter their worldview and risk their lives for a lie. They had no political or economic incentive to promote the idea of a resurrected Messiah, and they would have had no reason to believe in such a claim if they had not truly encountered the risen Jesus. The Apostle Paul's testimony also provides important historical evidence for the resurrection. Paul, formerly known as Saul, was a zealous persecutor of the early Christian movement until his dramatic conversion on the road to Damascus. In his letters, Paul recounts that the resurrected Jesus appeared to him, and this encounter transformed him into one of the most influential leaders of the nascent Christian church. Paul's writings contain what scholars believe to be an early Christian creed, which lists the various people to whom the resurrected Jesus appeared. This creed, which likely predates the Gospels, indicates that the belief in the resurrection was firmly established within the first few years of the Christian movement. The rapid growth and spread of Christianity in its earliest days also lend credibility to the resurrection accounts. Despite facing intense persecution from both Jewish and Roman authorities, the Christian faith spread quickly throughout the Roman Empire. This suggests that the disciples' bold proclamation of the risen Christ resonated with people in a powerful way, leading many to put their faith in him. Skeptics have proposed various alternative explanations for the origins of Christianity, such as the disciples having hallucinations or the body of Jesus being stolen. However, these theories fail to adequately account for the totality of the historical evidence and the transformation of the disciples. The hallucination theory, for example, cannot explain the multiple, independent eyewitness accounts of the risen Jesus, nor the fact that the disciples' belief in the resurrection led them to radically alter their lives and face persecution. The stolen body theory, on the other hand, does not explain why the disciples would be willing to die for a lie or how Christianity could have spread so rapidly in the face of intense opposition. Ultimately, while we cannot conclusively prove the resurrection through modern historical methods, the biblical accounts, the transformation of the disciples, the testimony of Paul, and the rapid growth of early Christianity all point to the resurrection as the most plausible explanation for the origins of the Christian faith. The resurrection of Jesus is not merely a matter of religious belief but a historical event that has profoundly shaped the course of human history. The resurrection of Jesus is the foundation of Christian theology and the cornerstone of the Christian faith. For believers, the resurrection affirms the divinity of Jesus, validates his teachings, and provides the basis for the forgiveness of sins and the promise of eternal life. However, the significance of the resurrection extends beyond the realm of religious belief. The historical evidence for the resurrection has important implications for our understanding of the past and the nature of reality itself. If the resurrection of Jesus is accepted as a historical fact, it would challenge many of the assumptions and methodologies of modern historical scholarship. The resurrection would represent a supernatural event that cannot be fully explained by naturalistic, materialistic theories of human history and the universe. This raises profound questions about the limits of our scientific understanding and the nature of reality. If the resurrection is true, it would suggest that there are aspects of the world and the universe that cannot be reduced to purely physical or materialistic explanations. It would point to the existence of a spiritual realm that transcends the physical, and the possibility of divine intervention in human affairs. The historical evidence for the resurrection also has implications for our understanding of human nature and the meaning of life. If Jesus truly rose from the dead, it would validate his claims about his divine identity and the possibility of eternal life. This would suggest that human beings are more than just physical, biological organisms, and that there is a spiritual dimension to our existence that extends beyond the confines of the material world. Furthermore, the resurrection would provide a basis for the Christian message of hope, redemption, and the ultimate triumph of good over evil. If Jesus has conquered death, then there is the possibility of overcoming the human condition of sin, suffering, and mortality. The resurrection would offer a powerful source of hope and inspiration for believers, and a challenge to the prevailing worldviews of nihilism, materialism, and moral relativism. Ultimately, the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus is not just a matter of religious belief, but a question that has profound implications for our understanding of the past, the nature of reality, and the meaning of human existence. While the resurrection cannot be conclusively proven through modern historical methods, the cumulative evidence from the biblical accounts, the transformation of the disciples, the testimony of Paul, and the rapid growth of early Christianity provides a compelling case for the reality of this pivotal event in human history. Whether one accepts the resurrection as a matter of faith or not, it remains a significant and influential event that has shaped the course of Western civilization and continues to be a subject of intense scholarly and philosophical debate. The resurrection of Jesus is a mystery that challenges us to consider the limits of our knowledge and the possibility of a reality that transcends the material world. In conclusion, the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, as presented in the biblical accounts and other historical sources, provides a strong case for the reality of this pivotal event. While we cannot conclusively prove the resurrection through modern historical methods, the transformation of the disciples, the testimony of Paul, and the rapid growth of early Christianity all point to the resurrection as the most plausible explanation for the origins of the Christian faith. Ultimately, the significance of the resurrection extends far beyond the realm of religious belief. It raises profound questions about the nature of reality, the meaning of human existence, and the limits of our scientific understanding. Whether one accepts the resurrection as a matter of faith or not, it remains a critical event in human history that continues to shape our understanding of the world and our place within it.